2020 audience. Welcome to the 2020 series presented by the New York Film Academy. The 2020 series are conversations with creative visionaries about craft, creativity, and collaboration. We have 20 minutes of shop talk and then 20 minutes of answering questions from you, the global audience. So please write into the Q&A and we will try to get to them. I am Liz Hinlein, filmmaker and creative director, and I am so impressed and proud and pleased to have these amazing maverick producers on my show today, Cristen Carr Strubbe and Jeanette Volturno. Hi, ladies.
Hi, Liz.
Thank you so much for being here. So we were just breaking down, they're both right now in the midst of production, one in London, one in LA, and the quagmires and joys of getting back to work, but the quagmires of the reality of getting back to work in our COVID universe. And if you guys, can you tell me the difference of what you thought in the very beginning of this, let's say March, April, when you had to shut down, and now? Like, what has changed for you thought-wise on production and dealing with something like a global pandemic?
That's a good question. I mean, we knew, at least I knew so little in the beginning. It was, you know, you were trying to draw in the dark, you know, trying to figure out how long was this going to last, and are we going to be putting these in long-term conditions? What are the unions going to think? What are the actors going to think? It was a lot of what-if scenarios. So there's a lot of that, and trying to figure out what would work, what wouldn't work, and trying to keep up with the medical community at the same time.
Yeah, and I would say that having done it now, you can assess easier what projects are lean a little bit more towards being easier to tackle in this environment when you're putting certain restrictions on things, and what projects need to be pushed down the road 6 months or so, because it's just too difficult to put your arms around something that has 1,000 background or something like that. So the types of projects and getting into what is possible is clearer now.
So Jeanette, you went out into the wilderness immediately, it seems like, and started doing like production, like, because you've done 4 films during COVID, right?
Yeah.
Like, how are you even, like, as a producer, managing that?
It was really about, keep it lean, keep it everybody needed to be communicating and talking. I think one of the more challenging parts was there's no production office on any of our shoots. So having that, like, hauler down the hall and have someone come over and look at it was a big challenge. So we stuck a giant television set up in our room, and we would allow everybody to pop in and out of a Zoom and ask questions, and just leave it on all day and just let people like come and ask questions, because it was so difficult to have a show and tell or ask something or whatever. And then we really went in with the mentality of, if there's a will, there's a way, and everyone's just got to communicate.
That's really smart. Did you find that like insurers or financiers were and are gun shy?
I mean, we've had 2 projects that had insurance already, and we were just, because they had been brought, one is a project that we're shooting right now, that was in prep and had closed down before it actually got off the ground. So it has an insurance policy on it that covers COVID. And some of the other projects that we have, we had to present particular rules and how we were doing things. And because they're in the lower budget realm, it was an easier chance for the insurer to figure out what was going to happen, because we would provide feedback to them. So.
And how, as a lower budget production, have you been able to withhold doing COVID testing and tracking? And
it's a whole department in and of itself. It's we've learned that you can't just have the production department take it on. You have to have another person help you with it, because the actual scheduling of that many people getting through in the morning before they actually get to set is a daunting task. And if you have day players that are coming in, or people that are short time span in working with you, tracking to make sure that they're in the system, that they've had it, that they've been tested fast enough, that there's, you know, double rapid tests that are going on, all of that stuff. It's a lot to manage. So it's more than just the production department taking it. It's somebody else who's getting their arms around that has the knowledge both on what's happening with COVID and the latest on that, and the ability to work with the COVID officer and monitor, and also to be able to work with production and handle that side. So it's a balance of both.
And Cristen, you've been like dealing with COVID on steroids, doing Jurassic in London. So that must have been it's like a whole new circus to put up, it sounds like.
Completely, one that you don't know anything about. Luckily, we had a production manager that took the initiative and the time over the suspension that started in mid-March to start researching and figuring out how this could possibly work. What would it look like? Here's a bajillion different ideas. And he came up with this 110-page amazing document that went out to all the various different unions, and everyone was on board with it. And it was great because luckily we had that person that was really forward thinking and, you know, loved the fact that he was doing all this research. So we've ended up in a really good place, but it is a mammoth undertaking. And we're really lucky to have the guidance of a company called Your Doctor, which is a concierge doctor medical facility. And they're mastering all of our testing and temperature tents and all of that kind of stuff. So we have really good partners in the trenches with us.
So does that, dealing with something like COVID, because you both have been, and Cristen, you are head of production. Does that fall under head of physical production, SVP? Does that fall under your thing? Is that like part of that, you're the point person to deal with that?
Yeah, I mean, anything that nobody really wants to deal with or knows much about usually falls to physical production. We're kind of like the, you know, the lifters, the heavy lifters. And we, of course, have environmental health and safety, the EHS department, which deals with that sort of stuff as well. But yeah, I mean, Jeff LaPlante, who's the president of production, is, you know, an amazingly thorough person who has all four of us working in tandem for all the things that need to operate and how a film is going to operate. I had a bit of leeway in that we were filming overseas, so we were not as beholden to a lot of the union holdups that were happening in the early days. So that gave us a bit of an advantage. But yeah, it was just figuring it all out from the ground up.
What else falls under your catch-all job description?
My position, mostly I get a project from creative. They'll have a project that comes through usually with a director attached, sometimes not, but usually. And then what happens is I get the script and start figuring out where would it be best to shoot it, what's the timeline versus the release date. And then my most important thing is who's going to get hired as the producer. So usually my input starts with the 5 creative hires: the producer, the costume designer, DP, production designer, editor. And that way we have the team that's going to set up how the picture is going to go, and working hand in hand with visual effects, because most of the pictures I work on have a really large visual effects footprint.
And do you have a choice, Cristen, in the projects? Like, do they say you have an array of 3 you could choose from, or this is your project?
I can voice in. I mean, when I first started at Universal, I did go to Jeff and said, you know, whatever I have to do to get on the Jurassic train, I'm going to do. And so he, you know, gave me that opportunity when I first started, which was great. And so it's a dialogue. There's 4 of us executives. And so we kind of gravitate to filmmakers that we've worked with before or projects that we already know about. So it's a flexible pot to pick from.
And Jeanette, now that you're independent with your own company, so you're wearing even more hats at this point.
Yes.
Also keeping the company afloat and in the green. So what is important to you? What do you surround yourself with to make your company go at this point?
I have 4 partners who are amazing. We're all equal in the company, and I really cherish and love the fact that we all have strengths, but we're all balancing each other out and working together on these things. And we have basically two tracks to the company. We're optioning and developing projects that we want to produce that are more in the PG to PG-13 realm, more of the stuff that we grew up watching that are in the Amblin-esque, John Hughes-esque style of projects. But we're also gun for hires, and we have been helping other people get their projects up and off the ground as well. So, you know, all of us have our strengths in handling multiple things at the same time. And when I was running production previously, I was able to oversee up to 15 movies per year. So it's the amount of projects. What excites me about working on stuff is that my film team are like my family, my extended family to me. And something that Cristen and I really believe in is cherry picking people and helping them grow in their fields and really nurturing their careers. And especially women, we lean into you know, finding women and help bring them up and finding the balance in that. So I think, you know, the projects that we're doing both through the company and through the production service side of what we're doing are important for us to find that balance of people and really lean into creating cool projects that we can get behind.
And you guys both have made, you know, huge strides for women in the industry, basically. And where did you learn your leadership skills?
Mine, I'd say, was from mentorship and emulating from leaders that I was working with. And I think that my go-to was always that leadership means, especially in film, that my job was to make sure that everyone on my crew had the tools they needed to do their job well. And that kind of covers anything that you might encounter on a film, whether it's assessing what the scene's going to be or how much it's going to cost or what it's going to be. You need to make sure they have the tools to do the job correctly within the boundaries that you're giving them. And I think it's a lot of emulating too. I've worked with very generous mentors, male and female, that have taken the time to give me direction, course correct, and I try to make sure that I have the time to do that as well.
Yeah, I feel the exact same way. It's really just, you know, gravitating towards people who are like-minded and like-hearted, and then, you know, they open up to you and they help you, and I'm trying to do the same thing for the people that are coming, you know, behind in the footsteps. So it's so important to be able to do that with people.
And it's a question. Did you guys both grow up in a world of patriarchy, do you think?
Yes. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I was lucky to be mentored by Johanna Persons, who was one of the very first female production managers in the business. And there just wasn't a whole lot of women. There was one tier just before me of women that were breaking through as production managers and physical production producers, and not creative. And so those handful were the ones that I was really keeping an eye on and looking towards. But there was also a lot of, obviously, just a plethora of men that you could choose. Who were you going to follow? How were you going to set up your future endeavors? And yeah, so that's kind of how it was laying out at the time.
Yeah, it was very catty back when we were coming up in the industry, and there wasn't a lot of positions open for women, so the women would fight to get that position. And then I think there was a turn somewhere along the line, and we all realized that, you know, there's no reason to fight. There's plenty of room at the table, and we'll all lean in and we'll help each other. And through that, we've been able to, Cristen and I are part of a group called the Women's Production Society. And there's about 130 of us, something like that, at any given time, that are heads of production, of studios, of television, of streamers, and are really there to network and share with each other, because it doesn't come with a manual. The job doesn't come with a manual. You have to be able to have a network to reach out to and ask the questions and get the resources and referrals for things.
Well, that is a great segue. So I would love to show the amazing PSA that you guys did. Charlie, play it away, please.
As women behind the camera, we work together to bring stories to life. The TV and film industry is a world of inspiring careers. Join our crew, be a part of our story, and one day you can be there for lights, camera, action.
So what happens when I text that number?
Well, the idea is that this is something that we first played in March in front of Birds of Prey. And the idea was to get this out in front of young women in all over the nation that would not otherwise know that their talents and skills are greatly needed in the film industry, and that there is a place for them here, so that we can, you know, widen the pool for us to pull from. And so the idea was to text there. You will get information about various different avenues to get into film, what the different unions are, different websites, things like that.
Yeah, it's not just about being a director, a writer, or a producer. Like, there are hundreds of jobs behind the camera, and in the studio side, on the post-production side, like in various places that just need more, besides women, just need more diversity in them.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Exactly, and it's such a great, it looks great. I know Nancy, the DP, who is featured there. Mm-hmm. And did you guys get a great feedback for that?
Yes.
Yeah, I bet.
Yeah, in fact, it played on the Emmys a couple weeks ago.
Wow,
so
that's wonderful.
Yeah.
And that came directly out of one of our dinners for Women's Production Society, where a group of us were meeting. We're like, you know, we have all these women that are, you know, real type A's, and we should be able to apply this to something else. And so it was kind of like, yeah, we need, like, you know, let's make like a PSA or something like that. And the next thing you know, it's, you know, funds are getting raised and people are pulling people together, and there's action groups, and then it gets shot, and then it's out, and we're like, oh, okay, well, I guess we did that. So it's very exciting. It's exciting to be in a group of women that are so motivated to do things that are altruistic, outside of themselves, to help other women, help themselves that we were 30 years ago.
Yeah. And do you find that, did you have to navigate what it is to be in your position? Like, as I was coming up as a director, all I saw was male directors and how they acted on set. Very cavalier, very cool, very like personas. And so there wasn't a lot I didn't know how how to be on set in my femininity, starting out at first. And did you guys find anything like that? Did you sort of deal with anything like that when you were going into your careers?
I've had many people give feedback on things, and I think the one that's sticking in my head the most right now, which is an interesting one, but one of my old bosses used to say to me, you know, take the emotion out of things when you're saying it, and say it very matter of fact, so they hear the actual statement that you're saying and not any of the gender around it.
What did you think of that?
It's actually served me very well. It took me a while to really understand it and really get it, and I still have to take a deep breath every once in a while if I'm being a hothead on something, and pull it down. But listening to feedback from other people is terrific if you can really digest and process and put it into action.
Yeah, I would agree 100%. I think early in my career, I moved out here when I was in my young 20s, straight out of college to get into the film business, didn't know what I was doing. And so and at the same time I was growing up and trying to figure out who I was. And it was a lot of trying things on for size. And I just couldn't pull off the gruff screamer on set dude thing. I just couldn't pull that off. And so I had a great advice actually from my father, which was keep your blinders on. You only answer to the person in the mirror. And so I took that along with, you know, great mentorship with other people I worked with. that have faith in the people that you hired. And that was also when I first heard from someone that really your job is to provide the tools to everyone else so that they do their job well. And that's really headed my course along the way.
That's great. That's wonderful. There's a bunch of questions here actually. So I'm just going to throw some out and see what we get. Abisola asks, how do you manage and wrap up production properly when you find yourself low in funds at a certain point during production?
All about sweat equity. Really, you just got to roll up your sleeves and do it yourself. I mean, I've tackled almost every job on set at some point in my career. And when you're delivering something and your name is on there, you need to, plead and beg with your friends to help you come in and finish something, because that's how it has to get done. And hopefully you don't find yourself in that position too many times.
Can you give an example, Jeanette? Is there one that comes to mind?
Yeah, if it's paperwork and it's because of accounting or paper or something like that, you got to pull in people and, spend X amount of hours to really do it right and oversee it and make sure that it's scanned or filed or signatures are on there or uploaded into whatever, delivery system that you're giving. If it's an editorial, you got to make sure that you've checked all the boxes for all of your delivery and that you've got someone there who can technically confirm that everything is correct. And so it's really, and then buy them a pizza or beer or whatever afterwards and thank them,
Pizza and beer always go a long way, no matter what production level you're at.
Yep.
It's really about taking care of your crew. If you find yourself in a pickle, you have to call your friends that are like, your right and left arms on things, that you would go and help them and they should come and help you, so that you can have a reciprocal thing back and forth, because everybody gets themselves in a pickle in production at some point.
Absolutely.
Totally. And that's also top down. So it's going into, to have those relationships, you had to be a good boss to create those relationships.
Yes, but I always try to put myself in the boat with them and say, like, this is how I want to be treated. So I've never been, as Cristen said, the screamer on set, right? There's a lot of those people, right? And I don't like that, and I don't want to hire people that are like that. So I try to really, my number one rule is to take care of your crew, treat them with respect, feed them well, don't break them with the long hours, make sure that make sure that they're really well taken care of.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, exactly. I would agree.
Cristen, Mimi asks, how did you work your way up from freelance to films like Get Out?
Well, Get Out was actually Jeanette. We were working together on that. I was a freelance person for 32 years about. And I had never really entertained going corporate, but I managed to have 3 children in the process of making movies. And when my girls were teenagers, I realized I had to change some stuff. Everything was leaving town. I couldn't leave town, or did not want to leave town for 9-10 months at a time. So I was pivoting, trying to figure out how to make this all work. I went to TV for a little bit. And then joined a small production company as an executive. It's a company that I'd produced for. And from there, realized that I liked the executive arena, but I wanted to be in a bigger pool. And then Universal, who was primarily the studio I worked for, and I was familiar with everyone there, had an opening, and they called me to see if I would come over, and said yeah. So it was really organic, and I think it goes back to what Jeanette and I were saying. I've had a relationship with all the people at Universal for decades, and most of the people that work there have worked there for decades. It's so it's about laying the groundwork for that and just being genuine to what you really love to do, and being genuine to the people that you're working with to do it.
Was it a big emotional transition to go from freelance to corporate day?
Absolutely. It really was. And my heart goes out to the first film that I was the exec on, because that poor producer, I should send her a gift basket once a month, because I was so in her basket of everything, because I felt like I was producing it and I should not have been. I should have been, you know, but luckily she was a very supportive, very seasoned producer and kind of allowed me the bandwidth to do that. But I've since been much better schooled in what my executive responsibilities are and much more confident in the people I'm working with and what I'm doing.
So when you guys work with directors who are also producers on their films, especially so the bigger names or the bigger guns, how does that producer, their producer position and your producer position, how do they flow together?
I mean, you know, it's always clear in the beginning. You try to, you know, figure out the best way to work with each other in the prep and lay down the groundwork, because nothing drives me crazy more than when someone pulls a trump card to say, like, you know, but I'm also a producer on this. So you try to have the conversations early enough on to say, like, listen, if the train is starting to go off the track, you can't pull that card. We're going to have a conversation, and this is what it's going to look like. And, you know, ultimately, you know, the financing entity and the studio that's behind this is going to have the say in where this is going and how this is going. But, you know, you just try to find the balance as best you can and work it out.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and most of the pictures that I do, there's a bevy of creative producers. The director is usually a producer, possibly the cast. Many of the cast are producers, but there usually is a defining line of creative producing and what the creative producer is doing with the cast and the director, and what the physical producer is doing. And sometimes it can become gray areas, and it's about making achievement lists, like, oh, director / producer really wants this bit of business. We just can't afford it. It's not going to happen. So let's leave that dangling until we have a couple of successes, and then we can come back and revisit it. So it's a little bit of moving both the creative and the physical production producers together to make an agreement.
And what do you guys find in, especially in larger collaborations like that, or even Jeanette with your 4 partners or 3 other partners, how do you maneuver that? Because it's not everybody's going to get what they want all the time.
No, it's true. And it really comes down to figuring out what's best for the whole, whether it's a project or a company or a group, or, you know, it's finding that balance. And I like the fact that our company has 5 people. So there's never going to be, you know, a deadlock on it. There's always going to be like even on the smaller things. We just had a conversation about the colors for our new logo, and I lost the thing, and I realized that, you know, it's okay. Like I can let go of that, and I don't have to be emotional about something like that. It's a give and take, and knowing where to have those conversations and how to have those conversations. And I think part of that just comes with growing up and being able to realize that, you know, you don't have to have a battle over everything.
But you guys work out that the majority wins, basically, in that sense?
Yeah. Yep.
Interesting. We have a question from Paula. Hi, I'm from the Philippines. I just wanted to ask, what is your biggest challenge that you experienced being a producer?
I would say that it's the record in my head. I always want the record in my head to be positive and not negative, because if everything is on me right now, I'm not under salary with a company. So if I am thinking positive, I'm putting those things out into the universe, and I'm attracting those things back to me. When I start going down the slippery slope of thinking into negative thoughts, then it changes the dynamics of the things that are happening around me, and I'm affecting more than one person around me. It's not only affecting me, it's affecting my business partners, it's affecting my projects, it's affecting my family. So if I can keep my spirits high and my focus sharp on what it is that I'm doing and where I'm going, and really be positive on those things, then I can manifest and create the stuff around me that I want around me.
And do you have some type of like meditation practice, or what gets you to that place? Or I guess you're the other
I think
place.
really
So.
the people that I surround myself with, we do it for each other. It's
100% that, 100%.
Yeah. It's the group that we're in, it's the people that I work with, it's the friends that I'm with. I choose the people that I want to work with because they are inspiring and uplifting, and when I'm feeling down, they remind me of why I'm friends with them and how wonderful they are, and I do the same for them. It's a symbiotic piece, you know. So yeah, there's a little bit of self-care in there as well, but it's really it's too hard to do on your own. This industry is something where it takes 100 people to create something, 100 plus people, thousands of people. So you really need to find people that are like mind and like heart, and stick with them because they will help you when you're at your lowest.
And Cristen, when you're in Universal, where you not necessarily choose all your teammates, do you find, is it, I don't know, is it political there to navigate, or?
You know, I would say yes. However, I knew almost everybody already. And I had worked for Jeff LaPlante, who's the president of Physical. I'd worked for him as a producer. So I had that working relationship. I knew what they needed. I'd also worked as a producer for Gary Wardham, my coworker. So I already had a lot of relationships worked out there, and we all knew how we worked. And we kind of have a joke that nobody can work in physical production if we haven't worked freelance on a fast movie. So we've all worked on a fast movie at some point. But I take so much from the leadership skills of Jeff, because he embodies everything that I ever try to be as a leader. And I am overjoyed that I get to work daily with someone who only sees people's exceptional abilities, and he has such a great way of course correcting for the things that go down. And it's quite a joy. I know I am the luckiest person in the business to work every day with a group that is so supportive, and the politics that are involved are never in between the people I'm directly working with. They may kind of come and affect us from on high, but I'm very lucky in that way.
That's amazing. And so what are the things about leadership that you've sussed out in the last few years?
I think they translate the same as when I was producing and giving everyone, making sure that they have the tools to do their job well. I translate that as well as being an executive and making sure that I'm providing the information that all the other departments, whether it's post-production, visual effects, EHS, legal, business affairs, visa, immigration. There's all these, the great thing about working for a big studio is there's someone who does something everywhere. And so the challenge becomes making sure that you've communicated everything that that person needs to do their job well. So I think that it all comes down to communication, what Jeanette was saying earlier. The clearer, more concise, more consistent communication you can have, the better it's always going to be received.
That's great. That's great. Hadram asked, do you guys have a preferred film genre? And do the genres that you're working on influence your work? Jeanette?
I mean, I've done over 70 horror films in my career. I find it actually ironic that I like working on them. I don't like watching them. I like working on them because they're more interesting, and you're creating something that might not necessarily exist in real life, if it's like a paranormal type thing or, you know, something like that. But to sit down and watch that, it is not my favorite genre. So it's a fine balance, and that I think that's why I'm leaning towards creating stuff that my kids can watch now, that I grew up watching when I was younger. Those kind of adventure type, you know, fantasy action kind of things that I like watching with my kids now are the things that I'm leaning into more.
Yeah, I think there's an adage in film that there's the films that you like to make and there's the films that you like to watch. And they don't often cross paths. You know, for me, my favorite, I am a Saturday morning popcorn, Spielberg-esque film girl all the way. Love that stuff. I also absolutely love documentaries. So I've never worked on one, probably never will, but I like both of those kind of things. But I love making smaller films with first-time directors that are just learning their ways, and emotionally impactful films. But honestly, I do gravitate to, you know, the Jurassics, the Fast, the, you know, that kind of stuff.
Right. The special effects bonanza that's going on.
I like to be taken away. When I see a movie, I really love to just be sunk into it.
Me too. The wow of the craftsmanship of how something is actually created, whether it be the sleight of hand or something that was computer generated, or, you know, a stunt, something like that. Like it's watching that craftsman do their work and be done seamlessly and integrated into the story is really great to watch.
If you guys came back in another lifetime, and now that you know all the different roles that people play on set, what would be another role you would take on? Another department, let's say.
I don't know. I think I really like the lane I'm in. I wouldn't,
Yeah.
I've never really wanted, I dipped a toe quite small into directing, not what I like to do. I really like being the producer on set. I really like helping with put the whole vision together and embracing the needs of what it takes to do that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I feel the same way. I feel like I didn't know that this job existed when I was going to college and getting out and figuring out what I was going to do. But to find a skill set and a group of people that is completely checks every single box in my life is really such a gift. And if anything, maybe I would have started producing younger, or maybe creative producing, but I do love the physical aspect. I don't think I could just stay in the lane of dealing with just director cast creative issues, because I also really want to know how many Steadicam shots are there, and why do you need 6, you know, more helicopter shots, and that kind of stuff. My brain thinks that way. So I think I'm one of the very lucky people in the world that has landed exactly where I was ever meant to be.
That's amazing. That's so joyful to hear that. Is there, or we're going to be coming to close in a second. So is there places that people can do research or look up Women's Production Society to just sort of, I know you have some articles on there that are really interesting.
Yeah, please. It's www.womensproductionsociety.org. And you can go there. There's many links there for different unions and different affiliations that will help you guide your way if you're interested in getting into film. And it's a great resource.
And anyone who's starting off, you know, I have a podcast series, which is called Catch a Break Podcast. And it's really great. This next season that's coming out, we're interviewing people and what it's like to be in particular positions and how you work together. How does a creative work with, you know, a production designer? What does that relationship look like? And various things like that. So I'm really excited about the next season that's coming up.
That is so exciting. Thank you guys so much. I know I'm taking away from your production day, and I so appreciate, and we at NYFA all appreciate you guys taking the time to share your genius with us. And
thank you so much. It was a pleasure, Liz.
Thank you so much. Thank you, NYFA, for the 2020 series, and everyone stay safe. And goodbye.
Goodbye.